Hi, I'm Gleaves Whitney, and I'm often asked questions about the American presidency in a column I write called Ask Gleaves. This question comes from Jason Tom, who's a junior at Grand Valley State University, and he asks, "What is the worst mistake a president has ever made?" Well, here's my answer. It's a great question because students often learn more from leaders' mistakes than from their successes. Historians of the presidency usually cite the following 10 blunders as object lessons for what not to do, not only if you're president, but if you're any leader. Number 10. Thomas Jefferson was surely one of the smartest men ever in the White House, but the Embargo Act that he signed in 1807 was premised on a flawed understanding of economics. The third president's effort to punish Britain and France backfired and instead crippled the American economy. Countless businesses were hurt and countless families were thrown into poverty. In all U.S. history, there are few more striking examples of the law of unintended consequences. 9. Warren Harding's name will forever be linked to the scandal involving Teapot Dome. The tragedy is not just that the president surrounded himself with sleazy subordinates who put personal interests before the national interest. It's that he remained willfully ignorant of what they were doing. Harding spent evenings playing poker while the corruption piled up beneath his nose. 8. Ulysses Grant had a problem similar to Harding's. The famous Civil War general so trusted the men in his administration that he couldn't see their corruption. Even Grant's brother-in-law took advantage of the well-meaning president and engaged in criminal activity. 7. Herbert Hoover's problem goes something like this. Depression. What depression? Well, I exaggerate to make the point that our 31st president let events get so far ahead of him that he lost ordinary Americans' faith in his ability to confront the economic problems of the day. These grinding economic problems, of course, led to the Great Depression. 6. John Kennedy's ill-fated approval of the invasion of Cuba, known as the Bay of Pigs, reflected a rookie mistake of assuming the military brass and the intelligence community were communicating with each other. They were not, and JFK's credibility suffered considerably as a result. 5. To get laws and treaties passed, our democratic system depends on compromise. Most voters accept that half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. But Woodrow Wilson's tactical blunder at the end of the First World War was to be utterly inflexible in his support of the League of Nations. Because he rejected compromise with the Senate, the treaty was never ratified. 4. Richard Nixon was the first president who resigned because of serious ethical lapses. The term Watergate became synonymous with a president who covered up criminal activities aimed at political rivals. The irony is that Nixon won the election of 1972 in a landslide, so he didn't need to stoop so low as to engage in criminal activity or to condone it or to try to cover it up. 3. Lyndon Johnson lied to Congress and the American people about the extent of North Vietnam's attacks in the Gulf of Tonkin. His object was to get our military more deeply committed in Vietnam. Well, he sure did. It proved to be the most tragic mistake in U.S. foreign policy to that point in our history. 2. Our 17th president, Andrew Johnson, continues to be severely criticized for his handling of Reconstruction. After the Civil War, he valued winning back the loyalty of Southern whites more than granting full citizenship rights to blacks. Arguably, we live with the consequences to this day. Incidentally, the Tennessean became the first president impeached in U.S. history. And number 1, well, the Civil War cannot be blamed on one person. Yet during 4 critical years leading up to the conflict, James Buchanan avoided very tough decisions. He justified sitting on the sidelines on the grounds he did not have the constitutional authority to prevent the South from seceding. Now, that is a serious argument to make. But it has been argued that had his administration taken a tough stand and enforced federal laws at military installations in the South, war might have been averted. Many other mistakes make the worst blunders list. Not infrequently, the choice reflects the political bias of the historian. So, for example, a Democratic-leaning historian might cite the Reagan administration's Iran-Contra scandal as a serious blow to the rule of law, while a GOP-leaning historian might cite Bill Clinton's perjury regarding the affair with Monica Lewinsky. I'm often asked if President George W. Bush's decision to invade Iraq in 2003 was among the biggest blunders in U.S. history, especially in foreign policy. As a historian, I must assert that it is too early to tell. The answer depends on how Iraq turns out, which we may not know for many decades. I'm Gleaves Whitney.